All right, good evening, Midwest Star Wars fanatics. We are back from our celebration extravaganza last week, and we're back at home, and we are excited to talk about this year or this the last week's. I'm already thinking about next year's celebration. Last week, Obi-Wan episode 3. I am here with my co-host Travis. And also, before we go any further, I want to do a shout out to the hashtag show. Because of them, we are here able to give you this great content, and our sponsor, TRG Toys and Collectibles. Make sure to check them out at TRG.com. So we are getting ready to hit to episode 4 of Obi-Wan Kenobi, which this series I thought has been great. I was kind of worried a little bit starting off, but now I am sold, as you guys have found out in past episodes of our show here for the Midwest Star Wars Fanatics. And we are ready to talk about episode 3 and maybe what we think might happen in episode 4. But before we get started, also, if you guys are listening and watching, please feel free to chime in, leave some comments in the chats. We would love to hear your thoughts and questions on Obi-Wan as well. So, Travis, episode 3 is in the books, man. Before we get deep into it, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it was, I think, a great episode. We'll obviously get much more into the specifics of it all, but it went in a direction that I was assuming we'd eventually maybe get to. I wasn't expecting certain things to happen, maybe episode 3. But I guess if you think back to the prequels, episode 3 was a pretty big of full circle here. Episode 3 of Obi-Wan is another sort of a full circle moment. But yeah, definitely excited to see where we go in episode 4, 5, and 6. You know, we're at the halfway point. That's the one downside to this. Is we know there's only 6 episodes for this particular series, so we have a lot to resolve here in the next 3 weeks.
Yeah, especially with it being already the halfway point, it is kind of depressing but exciting at the same time, because we know it can only get more exciting, I guess, from here. And talking about an exciting episode, I mean, episode 3 or 2 left us hanging with Obi-Wan realizing that Vader and Anakin were the same person and alive, and Anakin was alive, and the eyes opening in the back of the tank and everything, and that's kind of where we pick up in episode 3, with Vader and Third Sister kind of getting together. But before we get to those two talking, I mean, how cool was it to see Vader's castle, Vader getting put together? Kind of a glimpse of the Clone Wars when we see it, and also in the comics. But how awesome was it to get that Vader and Mustafar in the beginning of that episode?
Yeah, that was a really cool moment. I think just the camera sort of panning in, and you realize, hey, we're on Mustafar, and hey, that's Vader's castle. Something we've seen in the comics. I think it was in one of the VR video games a few years ago, but it's never been, to my knowledge at least, really shown full, like in live action like this. We've always had a few glimpses, even back to the original trilogy. You would see Vader and his little egg pod thing and the helmet coming on, and in the episode 3, him kind of getting sort of put together a little bit on the table and being safe. But yeah, that level of detail was really cool to see, the arms, the legs, everything being like, suited up, kind of putting Vader together piece by piece was something we hadn't really seen before. It's definitely kind of a cool moment to kind of see that in live action.
Yeah. And, and we learned real quick that Third Sister and Vader have already been kind of in contact with each other, and you're kind of seeing how these Inquisitors are pretty much working like the Siths do. They can't trust each other. There seems to be a power struggle with everything. Everybody wants to be on top, but Vader kind of tells her, hey, I've been watching you. You're either gonna pull this one out, give me Kenobi, or you're not going to be around anymore. So I thought that was pretty fun.
Yeah, and and I think it was an interesting part in that scene too, because we talked about this last time. We still don't know what the deal is here with the Grand Inquisitor. Yep. You and I both, I think, are in agreement that he can't actually be dead, because Rebels season 1 factor, Inquisitor is a big component of that. So what are they going to do? But then some of the dialogue, we'll get Kenobi, he'll pay for what he did to the Grand, and then Vader's like, don't even care about that guy. So I'm like, is he, what's going to happen? That's kind of the one big question I have still, that hopefully gets answered and doesn't completely rewrite Star Wars canon here for
Well,
us.
the good thing is I think we don't have to worry about that because I believe it was one of the directors or show writers um, came out this week and said that they are not planning to break canon. So
Okay, well, I'd say
obviously the
I would assume not, because I mean, heck, at the end of each episode, I think it says special thanks to Dave Filoni, but so it's like, yeah, hey, we took your Rebels thing and tossed it out the window,
yeah.
thanks.
So I think we're safe to say it's mere mushroom for the Grand Inquisitor. But things get really interesting with the third sister. Because not only has she been talking to Vader, and he gives her the ultimatum: either you find Kenobi or you're pretty much dead. Again, we talked a little bit about the power struggle between the Inquisitors, and they were pretty shocked to see that she already talked to Vader and is leading this search to send out the probes as well to look for Kenobi and Leia. Um, I think it's interesting because you're really learning quickly. No one can trust anyone, and who's going to come out top. And if she stabbed the Grand Inquisitor, who else is going to do what to become better? So, very interesting scene. I thought this was kind of neat. But as you can tell, I mean, do you think that how much more this power struggle is going to take, or are we going to see kind of a flop with one of the Inquisitors going kind of, wait a minute, this might not be the route I want to go.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting power struggle that they show between them. It kind of reminds me of they're almost like siblings, sort of vying for Daddy Vader's attention, so to say. Obviously we know the fifth brother factors in later on. I can't remember which sister that they have here, and if I think she's also the one that's in Rebels. I know there's just so many of them. I lose track of where they all show up.
Yeah.
One thing that I thought was really cool about that particular scene, if you have that image still, the Jedi lightsabers that they have in the cases there in the back to our left, that's kind of a cool thing I thought too. So it looks like, hey, as they've been killing these Jedi, sort of General Grievous, fine addition to my collection style. They're collecting all these lightsabers and things too. So it just kind of just shows you that the Inquisitor have been at work here now for quite a while and are been pretty successful, it seems.
Yeah, and we do know from the comics that they did collect the lightsabers of the deceased Jedi. Some were destroyed in one of the comics where they were throwing them into a fire, and then obviously they are keeping them as treasures as well. So pretty interesting on that. And who knows if that will lead into anything else. We could see some more Jedi, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, which I'm pretty excited about. But then we get Leia and Obi-Wan. So obviously Obi-Wan's trying to connect to Qui-Gon again, and he's kind of struggling right now. Qui-Gon either has his phone off the hook or is just not responding to anything at this time. But they're heading to Malpezzo. I'm going to mess up the name again. We'll hear it again there. Where they go to the grid coordinates running this miner named Freck. So very interesting. Again, working for the Empire. Tell me your thoughts on how this whole scene started and how it ended with with the stormtroopers and the firefight and everything else. So
yeah, I mean, I think it was interesting dynamic really, because I think so far by and large people we run into when it comes to the Empire, whether it's the Bad Batch or Rogue One, the people, kind of the civilians throughout the original trilogy, is everybody's kind of anti-Empire unless you're a true Imperial, part of the ranks. You didn't really have any love for the Empire. So seeing this alien truck driver, for lack of a better term, be so like, hey, yeah, I love the Empire. I have my handmade, Imperial flag on the back of my truck as I'm driving around here through the countryside. It was kind of interesting to see that, yeah, there were people or aliens, there's people, things out there that were kind of pro-Empire.
Yep.
And not everybody was necessarily against the Empire and what they were doing. So it's kind of a interesting switch up from what we're kind of used to seeing with most of the characters throughout the live action and comics and everything so far.
Yeah, and this led up to I feel probably other than seeing like Vader and stuff, but one of the most kind of heartfelt, emotional scenes when little Leia, that's what we're gonna call her, kind of like Baby Yoda, little Leia and Obi-Wan, the miner truck, being transported. So the first thing I thought was like when all these stormtroopers were gonna, setting around these two, is why didn't he use the Jedi mind trick? Like we are not the people you're looking for, and kind of go from there. But then they kind of mess up their dialogue and he accidentally calls her Leia, it got really emotional because he started talking about, Padme, and it was like one of those heartfelt moments that you kind of got lost in that scene. And to me, it was it really kind of was like a punch to the gut. You're like, wow, this is pretty deep for this little scene here. So, I mean, what were your thoughts on that? Did you feel the same way? Did you get that kind of emotional connection?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you could tell it was like, hey, everything so far is kind of superficial. We're just talking. We're farmers. We were out visiting family, this, that, and the other. And then, yeah, when he got, mixed up with the names, it just went straight into, yeah, totally genuine, totally like opening up and kind of being vulnerable there, discussing. And obviously, we know
Yeah.
what he was talking about, but then even Leia, I picked up on it. Like you're talking, like you knew my mother, you knew my real parents. So yeah, it was definitely a heart wrenching, sort of heartfelt moment. You can just really, Ewan McGregor's doing an excellent job, I think, sort of portraying that,
Yeah.
guilt that he's been carrying for the last 10 years since everything happened back at the end of episode 3.
Yeah. It was just, I mean, it was, it kind of slowed things down for a moment, gave you that thinking process. And then things get really interesting when they get to the checkpoint. Freck kind of turns his back on them and says, hey, stormtroopers, you need to check these two out. And then we learn very quickly that having the high ground does not work for stormtroopers. And when you fall through a laser gate, it's not usually a good thing. But again, we're kind of hoping for, one of the lightsaber and, the force and everything else being used. And Obi-Wan is still very hesitant of opening up to the force, which kind of reminds me of Luke, in the prequels is, he just doesn't want to open really back up to the force unless he really has to. So, I find that intriguing to me, how we're getting kind of like those parallels again when Luke shut himself away from the force and then Obi-Wan. So,
yeah, I really thought that was going to be the moment that we're going to get the lightsaber, but as the episode went on, I realized, okay, you were really saving it for the moment, and so yeah, we'll get there. But yeah, I was like, oh man, how's he gonna deal with this? But apparently, he's not too bad of a shot with a uncivilized blaster.
Yep, that was a good one about that too, with the blasters as well. So obviously when they went to look for those coordinates, they were looking for Tala, who was an Imperial officer that was kind of playing both sides of the fence and helping out Jedi as well. So we meet her we think Obi-Wan's done, and the next thing you know, she takes out the rest of the stormtroopers, and they're on their way to the village. Now this gets really interesting, and we'll talk more about in the village and the scene that takes place, probably up there to one of the most disturbing scenes in Star Wars, including Order 66 with Anakin and the younglings. It just gets very, very interesting where that's going there. But were you kind of expecting this insider, kind of like Agent Callus, kind of to help out and kind of take things from here?
Yeah, that was definitely a surprise. I mean, we had seen some images released during the casting that we knew this actress was in the series. We didn't know what character she was playing necessarily, kind of what her role would be. But yeah, when the transport showed up with all the stormtroopers and then the officer, I was like, oh, this is end of the line. They're going to be captured, and the story's going to kind of go in that direction. So yeah, definitely threw me off. But it was a cool, kind of a cool gotcha moment that we thought one thing and then it turned out to be something else. And I'm definitely very curious to see what her particular character is going to do going forward. It seems like she'll be, at least in the next episode, kind of with the way things ended in episode 3, that I could see her easily being in episode 4 and perhaps throughout the rest of the series playing a more pivotal role now that her character's been introduced.
And then that comment that popped up as well, I'll bring it up again so everybody can see it. I think this is very interesting because this would tie some things together. I think Obi-Wan is going to give Leia a memory of her mother through the Force. and that would answer some questions. And that makes sense because she did say she had some memories of her mother, but very vague, and everything there. So, that's definitely a good thought of when, things will happen. And who knows? Obviously, we've seen the Force work in some mysterious ways there.
Hmm.
But Tala takes, Obi-Wan and Leia to this little like factory that has a secret little tunnel in it. And I thought this was kind of funny because you have this droid that does not talk. Um, but it shows how loyal the droids are in Star Wars, from droids from R2 to K2SO to Chopper, and this droid was ready to take out a stormtrooper with a hammer. I thought was pretty interesting here. But we learn very quickly that Tala is running kind of like an underground uh, network for
Hmm.
and transporting Jedi, where we get some very interesting clues, which we'll talk about here in a minute. But what were your thoughts on this tunnel, and then where things were kind of going from there?
Yeah, that was a cool thing to sort of introduce into this because I guess we know, or as time's gone on, they've expanded on the canon with things. We know that there were some Jedi that survived Order 66. And I think Tala also mentions, other force sensitive
Mm-hmm.
people, not necessarily people that have been trained as Jedi, but just because the Jedi Order is gone doesn't mean people still aren't being born with midichlorian counts in their blood, because we know that's how it all works now, thanks to the prequels.
Yep.
So that's kind of a cool thing to see that, hey, there's more Jedi out there potentially. We'll talk about one here, hopefully here in a minute or two. But so there's other Jedi out there that we know, and then there's also just, hey, there's other force sensitive individuals out there, and there's this sort of underground railroad sort of network to get them to safety. And where they're all going, I don't know. Maybe there's some sort of outpost, a planet somewhere where they're kind of congregating and sort of keeping each other safe. And maybe we'll find that out as the series progresses.
Yep. So of course that Jedi we are talking about, everyone knows Quinlan Voss, which was pretty cool to have that name drop in there. So I really think there's a good possibility that we might actually see him. And that also opens up another door to the Star Wars world. Could he be the possible one that helped save Grogu during Order 66? So now that we know that he is alive and kicking, it could be very interesting to see where his story goes. I mean, he's obviously brought in this for a reason. At least I think he is, because why would you drop that in there and say that he's still helping take? Or you could have said that he passed, but he was helping. So hopefully we'll see some of that as well. But also during this tunnel, and I can't wait to hear your input on this as well. We saw an old Jedi symbol there, which when the third sister found this, she all of a sudden that rage came back to her, which goes back to the last episode we talked about, where I believe that she is one of the younglings that are training in the Jedi Temple when Order 66 happened, and we see them run. So, I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Quinlan Voss, possibly making a return, and the connection there we have with Third Sister and the Jedi Temple.
Yeah, I mean, Quinlan Voss I thought was always a really cool character in the Clone Wars animated series. I know they also had the expanded universe novel, Dark Disciple, which went into a lot of detail with him and Asajj Ventress and what happened with them. We'll get too much into it for anyone that hasn't read it. But then that book ended with Obi-Wan really sticking up for Quinlan Voss, so they definitely do have a pretty strong relationship. So like you said, it could just be a little Easter egg fan service for people that know the character, but at the absolute very least, we know he's still alive and out there. So they opened the door a crack to perhaps introduce this character into a live action, which I'd all be for. I thought it was a really cool character.
Yeah.
Going into the Jedi symbol connection with Riva. Yeah, I mean, at first I wasn't sure. I thought it'd be maybe too simple of an answer to be like, oh, yeah, of course she was one of the younglings at the beginning of the whole series when it opened up. But as time goes on, yeah, more of the dots start to connect, and I think I'm coming around to join the bandwagon on that one. I do think she's probably going to be one of the younglings from the beginning.
Yeah.
Because obviously she has a very visceral reaction and feelings about the Jedi Order and Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yep.
And that would make sense. I don't know why else you would hate Obi-Wan so much.
My theory with that is obviously I think she's holding it against him that either A, he took off after everything happened, or he wasn't there to help save the temple. There's obviously a lot of factors in on that, but I'm really thinking that there was a reason why they kind of zoomed in on her first and then spanned it out to the rest of the kids' training and stuff.
Yeah, or if she's, because these were kids, they're not like so young they wouldn't remember. They probably know that Anakin Skywalker was his apprentice or his Padawan.
Yeah.
So maybe she blames him for falling, or maybe she just wants to get close enough to Vader to, kill him too. Who knows what crazy thing she might be thinking.
So now we kind of jumped ahead a little bit with her in the tunnel, but this kind of leads us into probably one of the most darkest moments, I think, Star Wars. We've had some dark moments from, Order 66 to Anakin killing the younglings to, the Clone Wars was pretty dark at times, seeing Jedi get, tortured to death. But Vader, man, Anakin is on a streak right now of just destroying everything in his path as he goes through this town. And not only does he throws, a townsperson against his house, he kills his son. And then it's just literally just dragging people across the ground with the Force. Were you expecting any of this? And just what were your thoughts when this happened? I still can't believe what we saw.
Yeah, I guess for anybody that was like, oh, Disney, you Disneyfy everything, including Star Wars. And I was like, no, in this particular episode, we had a stormtrooper get cut in half, falling through a laser fence, which we've never seen stormtroopers get quite that, dismembered. We see them get shot and fall into pits. We've never seen them, sliced in half. And this, definitely sort of building, I think, with sort of the precedent that Rogue One set with Vader in the hallway, sort of a scene. Not that this walk through the town doing everything it did was as cool visually or as cinematic as that, scene in the hallway in Rogue One, but just showing, Vader unleashed and how powerful he really was. Because, one of the limitations, I guess, to the original trilogy was, special effects, CGI, various. You can only do so much. The lightsaber duel between Vader and Obi-Wan in A New Hope was pretty simple, pretty basic. We saw him force choke some other Imperial officers and things like that, but we've never seen Vader just pure hatred, pure power, just tossing people around like rag dolls, just like.
Well, you get a little bit of that in Rogue One where he's throwing them, but you don't actually see him
he's not snapping his
lightsaber went through him, but
yeah, it's snap his fingers and then people's necks are snapped. It's just like, wow, okay. This is pretty dark for a Disney Plus series.
And then real quick, Nikki, thanks for watching. She said, "What's up, guys?" So it's good to have you on here, Nikki. And Mike Harlan, thanks for watching as well. We appreciate you guys watching us, and make sure you chime in if you have any questions. We love to hear what you are as well. But this, so now we got Leia running through the tunnels with Obi-Wan, and Obi-Wan realizes that he needs to go confront Vader. I keep on saying Anakin. We're still that kind of where they're both the same, but and so he tells Tella and Leia to go off on their own, and then Obi-Wan goes out and kind of leads Vader on this kind of little chase to kind of separate them as well. So then we know the third sister's going after them while Vader and Obi-Wan are getting ready to face, and then we finally get the moment we've all been waiting for, and that is Obi-Wan and Vader getting ready to face off, and we see the lightsaber united for the first time since the sequels. So what were your thoughts on this, and then seeing that first battle between Obi-Wan and Vader picking back up again?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, I thought the lightsaber was going to come out during the Stormtrooper checkpoint, but kudos to the film, the directors and the writers for not wasting that moment there and waiting for this, because it was just visually, I think, made it even more of a powerful moment, because we've seen throughout the first 3 episodes up until this point that he's had opportunities to use it. He's still chosen not to. So you know, you can sense and feel that hesitancy and reluctance. So when he finally does it, it's like almost a cheer out loud kind of a moment. And then just visually, like I said, it was just so cool to be in the dark, and then that blue illumination on Obi-Wan's face and everything was just it was just a great shot and kind of a great moment in the episode.
Yep. And then Nikki also says, I love her freaking sass. Leia does have that good sass to her. And she also said you could tell Obi-Wan was definitely out of practice. Obi-Wan definitely was a little rusty. Vader was kind of controlling him pretty well during the fight, which we find out. And then, of course, obviously, look at that. It's just talking about a goosebump moment. We've waited a long time for this. And I hear a lot of people talk about, and we're kind of jump on a little tangent here for a second. The comment, when Vader made in A New Hope, I was once I'm now the master and blah, blah, blah. And everyone's all throwing a fit about this. Obviously, Vader is still an apprentice at this point. He is still learning the things of the dark side. So that whole scene in A New Hope makes sense because Vader is still learning. He is not the master yet. And he's obviously planning on becoming the master because you can tell he's ready to take charge of things. So now you can see why I think that was, we're getting all those gaps kind of filled in. So I hear a lot of people, talking about that. But just fight was just unreal. Just kind of seeing, Vader's pure raw hatred power, which again we saw in Rogue One. And then if you read the comics, it's there as well, and you see why Vader is the way he is. After you read the comics, and he even gets more powerful as it goes. But as soon as those two lightsabers hit, I won't say the exact words I said, but you know what came out of my mouth, and it was time to rock and roll. So I was pretty excited about that. But then Travis and everybody that's watching, talk about, I guess if you want to say reverse karma, like at least in Anakin's eyes, it gets even darker. I mean, how can we get darker in this episode? Well, they found a way. Deborah Chow found a way, and that's by why don't we just throw Obi-Wan in the fire and make him suffer like Anakin? I mean, what were your thoughts on this? And I don't think I talked for like 10 minutes after this scene because it was just I was still processing everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I mean, take a quick mini step back to the fight overall. I mean, like you say, you could definitely tell Obi-Wan is feeling the effects of cutting himself off from the Force for 10 years up until about 2 days ago when he did the Force pull to save Leia. So he definitely is not in his prime. He's kind of on the downward trajectory, whereas Vader's on the rise with his power. And just like you said, just the sheer raw strength and hatred that he had, physically like beat Obi-Wan down to the ground.
Yeah.
And in this moment here, you can almost tell like Anakin / Vader knew exactly what he was doing here. The stuff on the ground and then igniting the fire, and was like, yep, here's what it feels like, buddy.
If we could only read Anakin's diary, dear diary, my revenge on Obi-Wan will be getting him back into the fire like he did to me. That's what it seemed like. Like, you're right. He had this plan. He was ready to make him suffer.
Yeah, it was like he finally got to the point where he's like, I've been waiting 10 years for this moment, and I'm going to drag you screaming through this fire using the Force. And again, yeah, I mean, it's, this series it's had some lighthearted moments, with Lola and, and Flea making kind of those things like that. But man, this episode, once Vader showed up, the whole series really took a turn. From, pardon the pun, a turn to the dark side here with what he did in the village, and then dragging Obi-Wan alive through a fire pit is
and just let him suffer and everything. It was just unreal. Like, you're right. I mean, how like turning to the dark side it did. It's not like Yoda there. Turn to the dark side it did. But just that emotion, that raw just emotion there. And Nikki also said when they fought, I yelled rematch, and then it was like a cat with a mouse, and Didn't want to kill him, but toy with him a little bit. And that's exactly what Vader was going to make him suffer. And
Mm-hmm.
it was just
Yeah, yeah, and that's one of the things I've seen a lot of people kind of complaining about online was, Vader made the fire, then he got rid of it, and then Tala, made the fire again. Why didn't he force crush the droid that was coming out to save Obi-Wan, things like that? But I mean, to your point, I don't know if Anakin's ready to just, capture or kill Obi-Wan. Maybe he likes the idea that I know where you're at now. You've opened yourself up to the Force. I can track you, and I'm just gonna let you run like a scared, like she said, run like a scared mouse. I'm just gonna
Yep.
play with you now as like a toy until I'm, till I'm
But
bored with it, and then I'll finish it off.
what's also interesting with that moment as well is obviously you can't tell facial expressions with Vader.
Right.
But again, I'm going to go back to the Vader comics. So we know during Vader's time becoming, Master Vader or whatever as powerful as he was, he still had struggles with the light and dark side. And Emperor Palpatine actually put him through a series of trials, which literally nearly killed Vader, to make sure that he realizes that the dark side was more powerful and that he would quit going to the light side. So I'm wondering if some of that too, when he kind of let Obi-Wan go, if he was being conflicted again, kind of remembering, things like that. So that's one of the things I like about how the comics kind of tie things together, because it makes you think a little during this. I could be thinking too much into it, but at the same time, Vader was struggling with that compassion. And if you guys haven't read the comics, go read all the Vader comics. Probably some of the best comic series out there. And you'll see what I'm talking about, what Palpatine put Vader through and most of that was even after like the Empire Strikes Back. So we haven't even got to where we see the most powerful Vader yet. So
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
that's very interesting.
no, that's a good point too when you think about it, because the duel that they had Mustafar back in episode 3. I mean, you can kind of tell. I don't think either one wanted to really at that time kill the other one,
Yeah.
and that's always been the sort of the MO a little bit for Vader and Anakin. And that's what the original trilogy was about, was bringing Anakin Vader back to the light side through Luke. Is he's always in conflict. He's in conflict from the moment you meet him in episode 1 and episode 2. Episode 2, killing Tusken Raiders, falling with Padme. There's always that balance of light and dark going on. And I mean, I didn't think about it at the time. That's a good kind of observation to say that this kind of par for the course when it comes to that, to say he's not always pure evil. There may be some
Right.
conflict there that, as much as he hates Obi-Wan for what he did, I mean, Obi-Wan was still like a father and an older brother to him for many years. So there's definitely some probably internal turmoil there at this point.
Yep. So I mean, that's where I'm kind of leading on to this, but I'm really excited to see what tonight's episode, or this morning, however you want to put it, takes us, because now we're at a hurt Obi-Wan. He's burned up a little bit, but then we also know that the third sister hasn't officially caught Leia yet, because Leia took running, but we know now that she's chasing Leia. So what do you think? Are we going to see maybe another Jedi pop in all of a sudden that's going to kind of give a helping hand? I mean, could this be where Voss pops up? I mean, what are your thoughts going into episode 4? What we're going to see?
Yeah, I mean, for all we know, little Leia is still running around, ducking under tree branches, and getting away from Riva there. But no, I'm assuming she is going to be caught now, and Obi-Wan's going to basically use her as bait to flush Obi-Wan out. Yeah, knowing that he's hurt now, and they were on their way to whatever this next stop on this underground network was going to be. Yeah, I mean, I could easily see her and the droid taking Obi-Wan to the next checkpoint or to wherever this like refuge place is. They've been taking the Force sensitives, and yeah, maybe Quinlan Voss is there. Maybe another Jedi from the Clone Wars, or somewhere else that we've seen before that survived. Because I don't know that Obi-Wan's in shape right now to take on. Clearly, couldn't take on Vader. probably not in shape to take on Riva or any of the Inquisitors at this point either, given his display there in the last time he activated his lightsaber wasn't quite ready for a fight. So
At least
yeah,
it's not.
he's probably going to need some help. So yeah, we do know there's some other cast people that have been announced that we haven't seen. Was it O'Shea Jackson Jr., Ice Cube's kid? I know was in the cast. They brought him on stage at Celebration during the screening. That character hasn't been introduced yet, who he's playing. So there's still some people out there to be revealed as part of the main, cast that was announced.
And then Nikki says, I like going in blind with zero expectations. And I agree too. But I also like to try to take all these theories to see if I'm even closer, if I'm way off, which I've been known to be a few times, especially the Book of Boba Fett. We won't go into that.
Yeah, we missed the mark on a couple of those pretty badly, but that's okay.
But I think that's a whole new story. We might have to do a show on what we missed and
things we've gotten wrong over the last year. Yeah.
But definitely going to be interesting going into this one. I mean, we could possibly see Force healing again. Nikki says I'm always wrong, so I just don't guess. So I feel you, Nikki. That was me on the whole Book of Boba Fett. So we won't even, like I said, we won't even talk about that. But it'll be interesting because we could see some Force healing again. I mean, we know Yoda's still out there. We know that there's still a lot that we can see. So I'm excited for tonight.
Still waiting for Qui-Gon to pick up the phone and respond back because, we know he's capable of at least audibly communicating in a form through the Force. He did it in Clone Wars with Yoda. So we're assuming that at some point he's going to do the same with Obi-Wan. So perhaps this is another opportunity to help Obi-Wan refocus and get back on the right track here to be able to find Leia and survive all of this.
It's just I just can't wait. It's hard to believe that we'll be on episode 4 with only 2 more to go on with that. But we do obviously, Celebration, past, we do know we have a lot more Star Wars content coming our way. Tales of the Jedi, Andor, the Bad Batch, you name it. I mean, there's so much Ahsoka, and I can keep going. So I'm pretty excited about that, and we'll get more into those things, other episodes when maybe the series is over. But I am excited, that, our convention time is kind of slowing down a little bit. But for those in the Midwest, we do have some good Star Wars conventions still not Star Wars conventions, but conventions that are strong Star Wars guests that will be coming. I know Fan Expo, Carl Weathers, I believe Anthony Daniels, Ashley Eckstein, Gina. I just completely lost her last name there, Cardoon.
Gina.
And so that one's going to be in July, I believe, the week of July 8th and 9th, I believe. C2E2's coming up, which they've already announced Billy D, Mike Quinn, and Tom Barkley, I believe, did Yoda. And so we've got some very, strong Star Wars conventions. And also, Rhode Island Comic-Con is coming in strong again, like they do every year. So there's a lot of great conventions out there. I'm kind of glad to get a little break, especially after Celebration and then PopCon. It's kind of nice to relax a little bit and go from there. Nikki's put the Skeleton Crew sounds interesting. Nikki, we'll talk about that one in another episode. This is again where I'm not sold, but I might end up, eating my words like I did with Obi-Wan. So again, we'll talk about the adventures of babysitting later on in another episode of the Midwest Star Wars Fanatics Live. But other than that, I mean, anything else, Travis, you want to go over that we talked about, we might have missed with the series? Or
no, I think last time we had a show, we talked that we thought maybe the focus on Leia might diminish. I think we missed the mark a little bit on that one. It seems like little Leia is going to be the plot device that keeps on giving at this point to keep Obi-Wan from retreating back to full hermit mode. But yeah, no, I'm definitely excited about tomorrow/tonight's episode, depending on what time zone you're in and how late you stay up to see what's next. I mean, I think we were kind of in agreement that when this was first announced, we were excited that Ewan McGregor was back. We loved his portrayal of Obi-Wan, but didn't necessarily need another Obi-Wan story. I stand corrected. This is a really well done series so far. I know there's people out there kind of nitpicking about various things, but no, I'm enjoying it immensely so far. It's been a strong first 3 episodes. And I think, again, given that they have just 6 episodes, they're going to be able to kind of keep the story very tight, keep the action ongoing. There's no filler episodes like we've had with Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett occasionally, where like 1 or 2 episodes is just doesn't really progress things. At this 6 episodes, we've got a really strong finish, I think, to sprint here towards the last 3 episodes.
Yeah, I think I've kind of got to the point now where I just ignore the hate, because I think people just do it now because they think it's the cool thing to do. But we'll see. I think this series is still about an 8 out of 10 for me. It's definitely up there as one of the best new series. I think, obviously the Mandalorian I've got up there, as my top one. So I'm anxious to see what these last couple episodes are going to do for us, as well. And then for people, like I said, that haven't seen, that you're exciting stuff coming down the pipeline for Star Wars. So I can't wait to actually see the Mandalorian trailer myself. Luckily Travis got to see it, blah blah blah.
Oh, that's right. But, I forgot you weren't there. I
forgot. So I didn't. But still awesome.
You haven't seen it yet.
But excited. A lot of good things coming. Again, I want to thank the hashtag show for giving us the opportunity to write and talk about the stuff that we love so much, and that is Star Wars. Also want to thank Dennis over at TRG Toys and Collectibles, our sponsor, to make this stream possible. Make sure you check them out, trgtoys.com. Also too, again, I always talk about I will start laying the groundwork here pretty soon for our charity auction in August. Expect an announcement hopefully this week for our Ronald McDonald House Christmas in July charity event. A lot of good stuff coming. There will be an Amazon wish list for that event as well. So for those who can't donate in person, we will have a wish list that can be purchased from Amazon there too. So with that, again, thank you everybody. You can follow us at Travis and I at the hashtagshow.com. Also me at Star Wars Nerd 574 and Travis at Indiana Salone. Oh, wrong way. Oh, there we go. Indiana Salone. On Twitter and Instagram. And again, everybody, be safe out there. Cannot wait to see what happens tonight. And we'll be back again on Tuesday to recap and go into our next episode. Until then, again, be safe, everybody. Also, for those at Celebration, take your vitamins. I noticed that there's been quite a few. Somehow Travis and I have left there unscratched, but there were quite a bunch of COVID cases that popped up. Be safe out there, guys. Take your vitamins. We want to see you again next episode. And until then, may the force be with you.